Ah, the Huskarl, one of the best unique units ever created. Now, the Huskarl is a really great unit for several reasons. Because of its high pierce armor, and because of its quick build time, and because it's just pretty hard to counter. However, I think that it'd be really useful to look more in depth in this unit, to see really when you should use it, and when it might be better to go with a different option. And then I'm also going to show you that some of the things that you might have thought were counters aren't actually as good against Huskarls as you thought they were. Each Huskarl will cost you 52 food, 26 gold, it has 70 HP, 16 attack, which is pretty sizable, 2 melee armor, which isn't really anything special, 10 pierce armor, which is a lot, but it also deals 10 bonus damage versus archers, which means that it's the perfect infantry unit counter against archers. However, you probably already basically know that Huskarl's good against archers, because that's what they're known for. So I'm not really going to focus on that. Instead, I want to show you how I think you should best use a Huskarl in a Post-Imperial age or in a deathmatch game. The next thing to notice about the Elite Huskarl is that it has +4 bonus damage against buildings. This, combined with its pierce armor, makes it great in one of the best units in the game, in fact, at raiding economies, town centers, and even castles. Now, when looking at the Huskarl, you have to keep in mind that it's a goth unit, which means you have to look at some of the goth bonuses. Specifically, these bonuses. Anarchy will allow you to create the Huskarl at the barracks, and the Goth's other bonuses allow you to create units from the barracks incredibly fast. It takes only about 7 seconds to create a Huskarl from a barracks. And if you're playing on game speed fast, that turns out to be more like 3.5 seconds. And I think these things are the things that make the Huskarl a really great unit. It counters archers, which are normally a counter against infantry, so it flips that counter right there. It's good against buildings, and it can even raid buildings that are very tough to raid with infantry units such as castles. And you can outproduce your opponents and create a massive army that's going to overwhelm them. However, this unit is not undefeatable. There are several units that, at first glance, appear to be really good counters against them. These include the Jaguar Warriors, the Teutonic Knights, the Elite Cataphracts, the Samurai, the Throwing Axemen, Elite Mamelukes, Champions, and Siege Onagers. And if you're fighting the Goths, and your civilization has access to any of these units, you should use them to defeat the Goths, because this will be effective. However, be careful when you're trying to counter Goths using these units, because the Goths can create Huskarls so fast that it won't even matter if you're being efficient, because the Goths will still win. Also, the Goths have access to other units that work as even better counters that are actually cost-effective as well as game-winning effective. So if you're going to use a Huskarl, use it in combination with the unit that you think is going to counter a unit that your opponent is going to create. However, this does bring up another interesting point. The Goths also have access to really cheap champions. So when should they use champions, and when should they use Huskarls? The first thing to notice is that the Huskarl costs almost twice as much as the champion does, and it has less melee armor and less attack. This means that in a fight against infantry, or in a scenario where a Goths player doesn't have as much resources as he would like to, it would be a good idea to use champions, because they're a great unit for the Goths. However, in almost every other situation where there are other units that come into play, it's probably better to use the Huskarl if you have enough resources for it, because it is so much better against arrow fire and buildings. And when coupled with the halberdier, that is a very strong combo that's going to be hard to defeat. So I guess those are my thoughts about the Huskarl. It's probably one of the best raiding units, it's a really good rushing unit for deathmatch, and you can just kind of outspam your opponents because you're the Goths, and because the Huskarl is a pretty tough unit when it comes to defenses. Try to play it some more. I think you'll have some fun.